Hello and welcome to the third part of the letter to the father. I'm wearing my summer outfit today because it's really warm. And the drink of the night is vodka lemon. Cheers. And you will find out why. Let's start. Okay, here we go. You also have, by the way, according to your similar situation against me, tried some kind of resistance. You used to point out how overly good I had it and how good I was being treated. That is correct, though I don't believe that under the given circumstances it was of any actual use for me. It's true that the mother's goodness towards me was limitless, but for me all that stood in relation to you, thus in no good relation. The mother unconsciously had the role of a beater at the hunt. If at all your education could have somehow, in some unlikely way, by the creation of defiance, reluctance, or even hate, put me on my own feet, the mother then evened it out again with goodness, with reasonable speech. In braces, in this chaos of childhood, she was the archetype of reason. With intercession, and I was again being driven back into your circle, from which I might have, to your and my advantage, broken out otherwise. Or it was the case that a real reconciliation never took place, that the mother only protected me from you in secret, gave me something in secret, allowed me something. Then I was the light-shunning creature before you again, the impostor, the guilty one, who could, because of his invalidity, only attain through secret paths what he feels to be his right. Of course, then I developed the habit of also seeking on these paths what I felt not to be my right. This was again increasing my sense of guilt. It is also true that you hardly ever really beat me, but the yelling, the reddening of your face, the hurried loosening of the suspenders, them lying ready on top of the chair was almost worse for me. It is as if one is supposed to be hanged. Is he actually hanged? Then he is dead, and everything is over. But when he has to experience all preparations for the hanging, and only when the loop hangs in front of his face, learns about his pardon, he can thus suffer from this for the rest of his life. And this is the point where we will make a little side trip into the Russian soul, and this is why I'm drinking vodka lemon. Yoo-hoo! Yeah, I'm really happy about this. because now I get to talk about one of my favorite writers, Dostojevskij. Okay, I will try to make it quick though. Okay, so the last part that I read about Kafka comparing his situation to someone who's supposed to be hanged and, has to witness all the preparations for it, and then at last minute he gets pardoned. Well, Kafka also read Dostojevskij, and this is something that Dostojevskij actually experienced in real life. And I will tell you real quick how and why. So Dostojevskij, his whole name is Fyodor Dostojevskij. Well, I happen to have a book. I don't really know where it comes from. I think my sister forgot it here, because my sister studied Eastern European cultures and literature, and her main focus was China and Russia. And one semester she had a class just about Dostoevsky, nothing else. So and so this is an English translation of Dostoevsky, and I'm sure she must have left it, because I didn't buy it. So I will read the back of this book too, so you get an idea of the type of stuff that he writes about. Anyway, so he was born, did I say this already? I don't know, in 1821 and died in 1881. And he was arrested in 1849 because back then he was part of a radical revolutionary little club, little society that had been established by a young man who happened to work for the Office for Foreign Affairs in Russia. So, yeah, that's how it works. And Dostoevsky, he was actually part of a little, really radical circle that planned a secret newspaper. But the Tsar Nikolaus I, he managed to get a little spy in there, so they ended up being arrested. And back then, that meant the death penalty, and they were supposed to be shot to death. So the day came, and Dostoevsky stood in line. So that there was a mass shooting. I mean, they didn't go to all this trouble just for one person. So there were many of them, and they stood there, and so they were in line. And some of them, so the ones that were up, they had to go up on this little wooden panel thing where they would get shot. So Dostoevsky, while he was waiting, for his turn, he had watched all these people getting shot, and so, I mean, you have to imagine the situation. And then he got up, and really, the last minute, he was pardoned by the Tsar Nikolaus himself. And he got around the death penalty, and he got sent off to Siberia instead. He would come to terms with all of this also in his work. He wrote a book called Notes Out of the Dead House, where he writes about his experiences in Siberia. But also this moment of, knowing these are your last minutes and you're going to die. This is also in one of his novels called The Idiot. Yes, and Kafka knew this, and he knew about his destiny, and so this is why he related to him, and he would put up the example, of supposed to be hanged, but then being pardoned last minute. One of my very first novel of Dostojevskij was Crime and Punishment, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant and genius and just incredible. But if you're not familiar with the Russian soul, I would not recommend Dostojevskij to start with, because you probably won't make it through the first page. You will give up. It's just, it's not easy reading. It's not a summer novel, So if you're interested in Russian literature, I know, you know Tolstoi. Yes, we all know Tolstoi. Oh, he's so great, but not necessary, so you don't need to read him. Start with Gogol. Start with Gogol and get the Petersburger Tales, because these are short stories. They're easier to read, they're short stories, and they're really funny. They're just hilarious. So this is a good first step into this Russian adventure, and then you can, go on. And the Russian writers I would recommend are Dostojevskij and Gogol. Well, I wrote them down so I won't forget one. Pushkin, of course, Tschechow and Bulgakov. And the novel I just mentioned, Crime and Punishment. Kafka also really liked this novel also. In this book, Dostojevskij describes this guy, Raskolnikov. And Raskolnikov, he's a young student, and he thinks he's a little special. And he read Nietzsche. And so he got in his head that he might be an Übermensch. An Übermensch, one who is above everything. So he gets the idea, and he makes this plan to kill someone. Because he says, well, if I'm this Übermensch, that won't affect me. I can do whatever I want. I'm above the law. I'm above morals and anything. So he does. He ends up killing two, because this other woman just, happened to be there at the wrong time, and he just had to kill her too then. But the original victim that he chose to murder was this old woman who would run a pawn business out of her home. Yes, so he does, and then he expects, to just go on and be unaffected by it as this Übermensch, and but that's not how it turns out. He actually kind of goes insane because he can't take it. It just kills him from within. He can't bear it. He can't take it. So in the end, he gets saved by this prostitute, and it kind of reminds of Jesus a little bit, this whole thing. well, not everything, but this being saved by the prostitute and learning about real love. And anyway, really great novel. So, yes, so that was the little adventure into the Russian soap bowl. Yeah. Okay, we will go on. We will say, oh no, I wanted to read this back of this book. So this is a book called Devils. And I'll just read the back to you. In 1869, a young Russian was strangled, shot through the head and thrown into a pond. His crime? The wish to leave a small group of revolutionaries from which he had become alienated. Dostoevsky takes this real-life catastrophe as the subject and culmination of Devils, a title that refers to the young radicals themselves and also to the materialistic ideas that possessed the minds of many thinking people in Russian society at the time. So this was 1869, and Dostoevsky, he was part of a radical group in 1849. So this Bolshevik revolution, I mean, that had a long pre-run. That didn't come out of nothing, because these Bolsheviks, they don't make up anything. They don't create anything. They don't have any ideas. They just, see what's out there, and they just seize opportunities. That's all they do. So the satirical portraits. So this is out of them. Gogol. He is a master of satire, as is Dostoevsky. Not so much. Gogol is more the satire king. With their naivety, ludicrous single-mindedness, and readiness for murder and destruction might seem exaggerated. No. Until we consider their all too recognizable descendants in the real world ever since. Yes, until now. The key figure in the novel, however, is beyond politics. Nikolaij Stavrogin, another product of rationalism run wild, exercises his charisma with ruthless authority and total amorality. His unhappiness is accounted for when he confesses to a ghastly sexual crime in a chapter long suppressed by the censor. This prophetic account of modern morals and politics, with its 50-odd characters, amazing events, and challenging ideas, is seen by some critics as Dostoevsky's masterpiece. Well, I don't think so. I think his masterpiece is The Brothers Karamazov. Okay, so say goodbye to the Russian writers, and now we go back to Kafka. Okay. Here we go. Okay. On top of that, it was again a great sense of guilt that built up from all these times, when I would have, according to your clearly shown opinion, deserved a beating, but just barely escaped it because of your mercy. From all sides I came into your debt. Ever since you would reproach me, now in braces again, in fact me alone, or before others. For the humiliation of the latter you had no feel. The matters of your children were always public ones. So I start the sentence again. Ever since you would reproach me for living in peace, warmth, and abundance, without deprivation, thanks to your work. I am thinking of remarks that must have literally drawn furrows into my brain, like, now he's quoting the things that the father would say. Only 7 years old, I had to drive the cart through the villages. We all had to sleep in one room. We were happy when we had potatoes. For years I had open wounds on the legs due to insufficient winter clothing. As a little boy already, I had to go to the shop at Pisak. Pisak is a town on the southern end of today's Croatia. From home I got nothing at all, not even during the military. I even sent money home. But still, the father was always the father to me. Who knows this today? What do the children know? Nobody has suffered this. Does a child today even understand this? Now he's done quoting. Under different circumstances, those tales could have been an excellent pedagogic means. They could have motivated and strengthened to overcome the same hardships and deprivations the father had gone through. But you didn't want this anyway. The situation has become a different one because of the result of your effort. There was no opportunity to distinguish oneself the way you have. An opportunity like this one would have had to be created through violence and putsch. One would have had to break out from home, provided that one would have had the decisiveness and strength for it, and that the mother would not have worked against it with other means. But you didn't want any of this at all. You called it ungratefulness, eccentricity, disobedience, betrayal, insanity. Hence, while on one side you would lure to it with examples, stories, and shaming, on the other side you would strictly forbid it. Otherwise, for example, you should have been delighted, apart from the other circumstances, about Otla's Tschechower adventure. Tschechow is a place outside of Prague. She wanted to go to the countryside where you came from. She wanted to have work and deprivations as you had them. She didn't want to enjoy the success of your work just like you were independent from your father. Were these such bad intentions? As far as your example and your teaching, okay, Otla's intentions ended up failing in the end, may have become a little ridiculous, executed with too much noise. She wasn't considerate enough of her parents. The father once said about this Zürauer adventure of Ottler, he said, going to Zürau means leaving the poor parents alone. Yes, that's how he felt. Was this exclusively her fault though? Not also the fault of the relations, and especially because you were so estranged from her? Was she really, as you tried to convince yourself later, less estranged in the shop than afterwards in Zürau? So Ottler, she would also work in the family business in the shop. And she would open up in the morning and sometimes stay until the end of the day. And would you not have had the might, provided that you would have overcome yourself to it, to turn this adventure into something good through motivation, advice, and supervision, maybe even only through tolerating? Following such experiences, you would then say, bitterly joking, that we had it too good. But this joke really isn't one. What you had to fight for, we received from your hand. But the fight for the outer life, which was readily accessible for you, and which of course doesn't spare us either, that we can only win much later with childish strength in the age of manhood. I don't say that because of that our situation is more inconvenient at all than yours was. More likely it is rather probably equivalent. Whereas the ground predispositions are not being compared here. Our only disadvantage is that we are not able to praise ourselves and to humiliate anybody with our hardship, like you did with your hardship. I also don't deny that it might have been possible that I really could have enjoyed, used, and further worked with the fruits of your great and successful work for your pleasure. Yet it was our estrangement, however, that stood against it. I could enjoy what you gave, but only in shame, tiredness, weakness, guilt. That is why I could only be beggarish in my gratefulness towards you for everything, not through the deed. The next outer result of this whole education was that I fled everything that would only from afar remind even in the slightest of you. First, the shop. Actually, as long as it was a street shop, it should have made me very happy. It was so lively, lit up in the evenings. Kafka also experienced the first lighting up of electrical light. And, we didn't always have electricity. And very, very early 20th century, the electric lights would come. So that's why he's mentioning it, the shop being lit up in the evening. A lot to see, a lot to hear. One could help here and there could distinguish oneself, but foremost of all admire you and your salesmanly talents. How you sold, treated people, made jokes, were unremitting, instantly knew the decision in cases of doubt, and so on. Even the way you packed or opened a box was an act worth seeing, and all of it as a whole surely not a bad school for children. But since you gradually frightened me from all sides, however, and to me the shop and you coincided with each other, I also wasn't comfortable with the shop anymore. Things that used to be self-evident for me before tortured, ashamed me, especially your treatment of the employees. I don't know, maybe it was like this in most businesses. Now embraces again, he talks about his own experience. At the Assicurazioni Generali, that was an insurance company, for example, it was really similar during my time there. That was the first job he had, and then he switched. I explained my notice to the director, not quite truthfully, but also not completely made up either, with not being able to bear the yelling, which, by the way, I was not even directly hit by. In this matter, I was just too painfully sensitive. That comes from the family. That was it in the braces. Now he goes on. But the other businesses I wasn't concerned about during childhood. You, however, I heard and saw in the shop yelling, insulting, and raging like it is not to be found anywhere else in the world, as far as I thought back then. And not only insulting, but also other forms of tyranny. Like you would, for example, with one jerk throw down articles off the desk, like this. You did not want to have mixed up with others. Only the senselessness of your scorn excused you a little, and the employee had to pick them up. Or your ongoing figure of speech referring to an employee with lung illness. He can scrape off the sick dog. That was a quote. You called the employees paid enemies, and that's what they were. But before they had become it, to me you seemed to be their paying enemy. I have to check something in this picture. No, everything is good. For some reason, I just thought, I've read this before, but maybe because some of these things he repeats himself throughout this letter. So right now I just had the idea that I don't know, forget about it. He can scrape off the sick dog. So he called them paid enemies, but before you seemed to be their paying enemy. So he turned them into paid enemies. They didn't start out to be paid enemies. There I also learned the great lesson that you could be unjust. I wouldn't have noticed it so soon on myself. Too much sense of guilt, which agreed with you, had accumulated. But there were, according to my later, of course, a little but not too much corrected childish views, strangers that but worked for us, and for that had to live in constant fear of you. Of course, there I over-exaggerated, precisely because I readily assumed you appeared to the people just as terrible as you did to me. If that had been so, they really could not have lived. But since they were adults with mostly outstanding nerves, they shook off the insults without any trouble, and eventually it hurt you much more than them. To me, however, the shop became intolerable. It reminded me too much of my relation to you. Apart from the entrepreneurship and apart from your addiction to rule, just as a businessman, you were so superior over anyone who ever learned from you that none of their accomplishments could satisfy you. Similarly, always unsatisfied, you must have been with me. That's why I necessarily belonged to the part of the staff. And also because out of fear wanted to somehow reconcile the, as far as I was concerned, awfully upset staff with you, with our family, out of personal safety issues alone. For that, common decent behavior towards the staff wasn't enough anymore. Not even modest behavior. But I needed to be humble, not only be the first to greet, but possibly even fend off the counter-greet. And had I, the insignificant person, licked their feet below, it still would not have evened out the way you, the Lord, would hack forth on them from above. This kind of relation towards fellow men that I entered here was effective beyond the shop and further into the future. Something similar, but not as dangerous or profound as with me, is, for example, Otla's preference for the contact with poor people, the sitting together with the maid, which annoys you so much, and so on. In fact, Otla, so that was the youngest sister and his favorite sister, and they were very much alike, Franz and Otla. And in a letter to Milena Jesenska, a woman friend he had during his very last years of his life, he says this: in the kitchen next door, the sister is talking with the cook, because this girl, we have only had her for a few days, a 19-year-old, giant-like strong, claims to be the most unhappy girl in the world. Without reason. She's only unhappy because she's unhappy, and needs the comfort of the sister, who, by the way, ever since, as the father says, most prefers to sit with the maid. Okay, we go on in the letter to the father. Eventually, I almost became scared of the shop, And anyway, it hasn't been my thing anymore long before I went to the gymnasium. Gymnasium, that's like the higher school. What led me even further from it. And besides, it seemed completely unreasonable for my abilities, since, as you said, it even used up all of yours. Then you looked, in braces, for me today, this is touching and ashaming, to pull some kind of sweetness out of my, and very painful to you, aversion against the business, your work, by claiming I was lacking business sense. I have higher ideas in mind, and so on. The mother, of course, was happy about this explanation that you forced out of yourself. And also I, in my vanity and need, let myself be influenced by it. If it really had been only or primarily the higher ideas that discouraged me from the business, which now, but only now, I really hate, they should have acted out different than to let me go and fearsomely swim through the gymnasium and the law school until I finally ended up at the employee's desk. If I wanted to flee you, I also had to flee the family, even the mother. Though one could always find protection with her, but only in relation to you. Too much she loved you and was too devoted to you, than to possibly be a consistent, independent mental force in the fight of the child. A correct instinct of the child, by the way, since with the years the mother only became attached to you closer, while she would always, as far as for herself, nice and tender, keep her independency in closest borders without ever considerably hurting your feelings. With the years she did, more with her heart than with her head, blindly take on your opinions and judgments regarding the children more and more completely, especially in the rather heavy case of Ottla. Of course, one must always keep in mind how agonizing and completely wearing the stand of the mother was in the family. She would trouble herself in the shop, in the household, suffered all illnesses of the family double. But the crowning of all of that was what she suffered standing in between us and you. You have always been loving and considerate towards her. But in this case, you did not spare her feelings, just as we did not spare her feelings. Inconsiderably, we hammered away on her, you from your side, we from our side. It was a distraction. One did not think anything bad. One only thought about the fight you carried out against us, and we against you. And on the mother we romped around. The way you would, without any guilt, on your side of course, torture her because of us, wasn't a good contribution to the upbringing of the child either. So we failed on all sides. It even seemed to justify our otherwise unjustifiable behavior towards her. What did she suffer from us because of you, and from you because of us? Not taking into consideration the cases when you were right, because she spoiled us. Whereas even this spoiling may have been sometimes a quiet, unconsciously counter-demonstration against your system. Of course, the mother could not have bared all this if she had not taken the strength to bear from the love for us all and from the joy of this love. And on that note, I shall finish the third part of Kafka's letter to the father. Thank you very much for watching, and I see you next time.